There is a car most people have never seen, never sat in, never even heard of, and that silence, that complete absence from popular memory, is itself part of the story. You already know the Beetle. You've probably heard of the Karmann Ghia, that sleek little coupe that looked like it rolled out of a Ferrari factory but ran on a Beetle engine. Charming, affordable, wildly successful. It turned ordinary people into people who felt like they were driving something extraordinary. For 20 years, it did exactly that. But this story isn't about that car. This is about the one that came after, the one built to surpass it in every possible way. More powerful, more luxurious, more beautiful. 2. More technologically advanced than anything Volkswagen had ever put into production. The car that was supposed to be VW's statement to the world, that they weren't just a company that made sensible transport for sensible people, they could build something magnificent. And then they buried it. The VW Type 34 Karmann Ghia. You could spend your entire life as a car enthusiast and never see one on the road, never even encounter a photograph. That is how thoroughly this machine has been removed from the popular conversation, despite being, by almost every objective measure, the most extraordinary Volkswagen built in the entire decade of the 1960s. So here is what nobody tells you. The full story. The part that was left out of the press releases, and the dealership brochures, and the company anniversary books. Pay close attention, because this isn't a story where the car itself is the tragedy. The car was exceptional. The tragedy is everything that surrounded it. The decisions made in boardrooms. The markets it was locked out of. The convertible version that almost made it into production and was cancelled after the public had already been shown it. The designer who quietly passed away in 2009 without the wider world ever properly understanding what he had created. This is a story about beauty, about ambition, about what happens when a genuinely great product lands in exactly the wrong set of circumstances. And about why, decades later, the people who do know this car treat every surviving example like the rare and irreplaceable thing it actually is. Once you understand the Type 34, you will never look at a car park full of identical vehicles quite the same way again, because this machine is proof that being right is not enough. Being beautiful is not enough. You have to be in the right place, at the right price, in the right market, at the right moment. The Type 34 was none of those things, even though it was everything else. Let's go back to the beginning, because before there was a Type 34, there was a secret. And that secret is where the whole story starts. The year is 1953. Volkswagen is riding the success of the Beetle, a car that, against all rational expectation, had become one of the most beloved vehicles on earth. And Wilhelm Karmann, the head of a family coach-building firm in Osnabrück, Germany, has an idea. He wants to build something beautiful on top of that Beetle platform. Something that transforms the car's practicality into something approaching elegance. Volkswagen isn't interested, so Karmann goes around them. He contacts Luigi Segre, the head of Carrozzeria Ghia, in Turin, Italy. The two men know each other from the international motor show circuit. Karmann makes his intentions clear. And Segre does something that, in retrospect, was either brilliantly bold or magnificently reckless, possibly both. He secretly acquires a Volkswagen Beetle, in Paris, through a contact named Gianpaolo Boano, son of the coach builder Mario Boano. The Beetle is driven from Paris back to Turin. No permission from Wolfsburg. No approval from VW's management. Just a group of Italian craftsmen, a borrowed German car, and an outsized ambition. 5 months later, the prototype is finished. Segre presents it to Wilhelm Karmann in Paris, in late 1953. The story goes that Karmann looked at what Ghia had created and said, without hesitation, "I'd like to build that." Build it they did. By 1955, the Karmann Ghia Type 14 was being shown to the world at Frankfurt and Paris simultaneously. The public response was immediate and overwhelming. It looked like a proper Italian sports car. It sounded and felt like something exotic. But underneath, it was mechanically identical to the Beetle, which meant that almost anyone who could afford a Volkswagen could take one home. Over the following 20 years, The Type 14 would sell more than 445,000 units across both coupe and cabriolet versions. One of the best-selling sports coupes of the entire post-war era. But success at that scale has a way of hiding problems until they become impossible to ignore. The Type 14 was beautiful, genuinely, arrestingly beautiful, but it was slow. The original engine produced 34 horsepower, top speed, 75 miles per hour. As the 1960s arrived and competitors from Alfa Romeo, Triumph, Fiat, and MG began offering real performance at accessible prices, Volkswagen's elegant coupe was starting to look like a car that made promises its engine couldn't keep. Volkswagen's response was to develop an entirely new platform. They called it the Type 3. More refined, more spacious, more powerful, and built around a genuinely innovative engine design. The unit was so flat, so radically low profile that luggage could be stored on top of it, inside the rear compartment. This pancake engine displaced 1,500 cubic centimeters and produced around 50 horsepower, depending on specification, a near 50% increase over the old Beetle unit. And the packaging was so efficient that the Type 3 offered both a front luggage compartment and a rear one simultaneously. In 1961, when most of the world was still packaging tall, upright engines under conventional bonnets, this was quietly revolutionary engineering. Volkswagen's decision wrapped this new platform in a new Karmann Ghia body, and, for that body, they didn't return to the team that had designed the original. They handed the commission to a young Italian engineer named Sergio Sartorelli. And what he produced would be, depending on your perspective, either his finest hour or the most beautifully constructed dead end in automotive design history. Sergio Sartorelli was born in Alessandria, in the Piedmont region of northern Italy, on the 7th of May, 1928. He grew up during the Second World War, and like many young people of that era living through years of destruction and uncertainty, he found refuge in drawing. He filled school notebooks with sketches, cars, trucks, military vehicles, trains, not as a hobby, as a way of surviving the world around him. After the war, he earned his degree in mechanical engineering at the Polytechnic University of Turin in 1954. He served 18 months of military service as a cartographer, continuing to sketch during off hours for Carrozzeria Boano. And in 1956, he was hired by Carrozzeria Ghia, one of the most prestigious coach-building houses in the world. His early work at Ghia was varied and impressive. Among his first production projects was the Fiat 500 Jolly, the delightful open beach car that became a symbol of Italian post-war optimism, with its wicker seats and fringed roof canopy. But the assignment that would define his legacy came around 1960, when Ghia was commissioned to design the body for Volkswagen's new top-of-the-range coupe. What Sartorelli created was startling in its departure from what had come before. The Type 14 was soft, rounded, almost organic. It flowed. The Type 34 did none of those things. It had edges, precise, intentional, architectural edges. Creases that ran along the body with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The roofline descended in a clean, controlled arc toward the rear. The taillights were round and elegantly integrated. The front featured 4 round headlights, arranged symmetrically, with fog lights built directly into the front bumper, not bolted on as an afterthought, but designed in from the beginning. In Britain, the car would be nicknamed the Razor Edge Ghia. Look at it once, and you understand immediately. It is sharp in the way that the best mid-century European design is sharp, purposeful, not aggressive, precise, not cold. The interior represented a genuine step forward for Volkswagen. An electric clock, 3 separate luggage compartments, front, rear upper, and rear lower, upper and lower padded dashboard. Long padded armrests on the doors. It was the first Volkswagen that could legitimately be described as luxurious without exaggeration. And then in 1962, Volkswagen added one more detail, an electrically operated sliding steel sunroof, not a crank mechanism, not a fabric panel. A power-operated steel roof that slid open at the touch of a button. At that moment, The Type 34 became only the second car in the world to offer this feature. The second in the world. Let that sit for a moment. Because that single fact, more than the design, more than the engine, more than any specification on the sheet, tells you precisely what kind of car this was intended to be. This was VW's statement of intent, their declaration that they could lead, not just follow. The car was unveiled at the Frankfurt Motor Show in September of 1961. Journalists praised it. Enthusiasts admired it. The words "Touring Touch" appeared in contemporary reviews, a recognition that this Volkswagen had something the others didn't, a presence, a character that went beyond the merely competent. And then everyone looked at the price, and the conversation changed entirely. The Type 34 was priced at 8,750 Deutschmarks in Germany. That sounds like a number. Here is what that number meant in context. Volkswagen's own Type 3 sedan, the car sitting underneath the Type 34, sharing every single mechanical component except the bodywork, cost 5,990 Deutschmarks. The Type 34 carried a 50% premium for the same drivetrain, under more beautiful skin. And compared to the Beetle itself, the arithmetic was even more brutal. You could buy two Beetles for the price of one. Type 34, with change to spare. In the United States, and this matters enormously, so stay with me, the equivalent price in the mid-1960s was approximately $3,000. That same year, the Ford Mustang launched at just over $2,300, nearly $800 cheaper. And the Mustang didn't just outsell the Type 34. It triggered the most explosive single sales event in American automotive history, moving over 400,000 units in its first year alone. But here is the most damaging fact in this entire story. The Type 34 was never officially sold in the United States at all. Pause on that. Volkswagen's most advanced, most luxurious, most technologically sophisticated passenger car of the entire decade, completely and deliberately absent from the world's largest and most important car market. The country where the Beetle was a cultural phenomenon. The country where the Type 14 Karmann Ghia had built a passionate following. The country where affluent, style-conscious buyers were spending real money on European imports. That market was simply closed. No official distributor, no dealer network, no launch event. A small number of cars reached American buyers through Canada, where the Type 34 was available. And today, remarkably, the United States actually has the largest documented surviving population of Type 34s in the world, with approximately 400 known examples. But those are survivors. Those are the cars that made it across informally, over decades. During the car's actual production life, American buyers who might have paid a premium for something this distinctive were simply never given the option. Volkswagen's own internal records describe sales of 8,653 units in 1962, the first full production year, as less than expected. That is a rare thing from a corporate document, an unambiguous admission that something has gone wrong. The numbers never recovered meaningfully. Every year, the Type 34 moved roughly 5,000 units, a fraction of the Type 14's output, and commercially negligible by any serious standard. Now, before we reach the sharpest part of this story, if this channel is new to you, this is what we do here every week. Real automotive history. The decisions behind the cars. The things the official accounts leave out. Subscribe now so you don't miss what's coming next. Hit like if you're finding this valuable. It genuinely helps more people find this content. Drop a comment below. Had you ever heard of the Type 34 before today? And if you know someone who loves cars and history, share this with them right now. They will thank you. Because what comes next is the part that most people who even know this car exists have never heard. The convertible that was shown to the world, built in prototype form, featured in official brochures, and then cancelled before a single customer could buy one. From the very beginning, the plan was always two versions, a coupe and a cabriolet. Just as the Type 14 had offered both a hardtop and a drop top, with the convertible proving even more popular than the coupe in certain markets, the Type 34 was designed from the outset to follow the same formula. Ghia drew the open body. Karmann's engineers worked on the structural challenges. The car was prototyped. It was photographed. It appeared in official Volkswagen brochures. The public was shown it. Between 12 and 17 pre-production convertible examples were assembled at the Karmann factory in Osnabrück. The exact number has never been officially confirmed, which is itself telling. And then Volkswagen cancelled it. The engineering reason was real and unavoidable. Without a fixed roof providing structural rigidity, a convertible body requires substantial reinforcement in the floor, the sills, and the scuttle. On the Type 34's platform, achieving the necessary torsional stiffness without that roof required a level of additional engineering that made the car prohibitively expensive to produce. Karmann concluded they could not build it at a price any realistic buyer would accept, and given that the coupe was already struggling at its existing price point, a cabriolet priced even higher was a commercial impossibility. The decision was made. The cabriolet was gone. Those prototype cars are now among the most valuable Volkswagens anywhere on Earth. One is held in the Karmann Museum in Osnabrück, not publicly accessible, which feels appropriate for a car that was always just out of reach. Another is in the Volkswagen Classic Collection in Wolfsburg. At least 6 are believed to survive in various private and institutional hands. None have ever been assigned an official market value, because when something exists in those quantities, conventional pricing becomes largely meaningless. What you are looking at, if you ever find yourself near one, is an automotive ghost, a car the world was promised and then denied. By the mid-1960s, Volkswagen was facing a set of pressures that made the Type 34's position even more precarious. The Beetle, still selling in enormous numbers, was beginning to show its philosophical age. The world was shifting toward front-wheel drive and water-cooled engines. Volkswagen's entire range was built around an architecture the market was quietly moving away from. Simultaneously, Volkswagen had completed the acquisition of Auto Union from Daimler-Benz in 1965, the manufacturer that would eventually become Audi. A transformational move that stretched the company's financial and operational capacity significantly. New production lines needed investment. The organization was being rebuilt from the inside. In that environment, a car selling 5,000 units per year, at high production cost, in limited markets, with no American presence and no convertible variant, was a luxury the company could no longer carry. A mild recession across Europe in 1965 and 66 removed any remaining hesitation. High-cost, low-volume models were the first to be cut. The Type 34 was exactly that. Updates arrived: disc brakes, a 12-volt electrical system, an enlarged 1,600 cubic centimeter engine from 1966, an automatic gearbox option in 1968. But these were extensions of a life already drawing to its close, not rescues. Production of the Volkswagen Karmann Ghia Type 34 ended in July of 1969, 8 years, 42,505 cars. At the height of Beetle production, Volkswagen built 4,200 Beetles every single day. The Type 34's entire production run, every car ever made, was the equivalent of roughly 10 days on that line. The factory was retooled for the VW Porsche 914. The big Karmann ceased to exist. No farewell edition. No commemoration. The world moved on, and barely noticed. Sergio Sartorelli moved on too. He went to OSI, a parallel company linked to Ghia, and eventually became head of the Future Studies Department at Fiat's Centro Stile in Turin. He went on to design the Fiat 126, the compact city car that became one of the defining vehicles of 1970s Italy. A long career, a productive career, a career that touched millions of people's daily lives through the cars they drove without ever knowing his name. But the honorary presidency of the Italian Volkswagen Karmann Ghia club that he held until the very end. Sergio Sartorelli died in Turin on the 28th of November, 2009. He was 81 years old. Outside of specialist automotive circles, his passing went almost entirely unnoticed. The car he had drawn in a studio in Turin almost 50 years earlier was, by then, already becoming something remarkable, a collectible, a rarity. A machine that the survivors of its own era were beginning to seek out with real seriousness and to pay serious money for. Fewer than 10% of the 42,500 Type 34s ever built are believed to still exist. Roughly 4,000 cars, scattered across Europe, North America, and a small number of other markets, many unrestored, some sitting in barns or private collections unseen for decades. In the spring of 2023, one turned up in a salvage yard in Georgia, an event that generated genuine excitement among collectors, because an American Type 34, even in distressed condition, is a profoundly unusual sight. The surviving examples in good condition command serious money. A well-preserved original today realistically sells for $25,000 or more. A pristine, unrestored 1962 example, in pearl white, sold in Germany in 2010 for $34,000. Values have continued to rise steadily since then, as awareness of the car grows among a younger generation of enthusiasts who are discovering it for the first time. This is the quiet irony that runs through automotive history again and again. The cars that were too expensive when new, that sold in small numbers, that were deliberately excluded from major markets, those are precisely the cars that become the most significant decades later. Rarity confers its own kind of permanence. But the Type 34 is more than a collector's artifact. It is a lesson. It was not killed by bad engineering. It was not killed by an ugly design. It was killed by a 50% price premium over cars sharing its mechanicals, by the inexplicable decision to exclude it from the world's largest car market, and by the cancellation of the convertible that might have given it a broader audience. It fell into the gap between the car it was and the commercial reality it was placed into. Sergio Sartorelli spent his final decades knowing that his most technically ambitious, most visually distinctive work had been largely overlooked during the only years it was actually available to buy. He never complained publicly about it. He continued designing. But the clubs, the registries, the collector letters, the concours entries, they were all for the Type 34, always. When you see one today at an auction, at a carefully curated classic car event, occasionally in a private garage where the owner knows exactly what they have, you're looking at something that carries the full weight of its own unlived life. Sharp-edged, quiet, precise, making everything around it look slightly ordinary by comparison. Some things are made correctly the first time and simply arrive before the world is ready for them. The Type 34 Karmann Ghia was one of those things. If this story gave you something, a car you'd never heard of, a chapter of history that deserved to be told, subscribe to this channel. This is what we do here every week. Hit the like button. It genuinely helps this content reach more people. Leave a comment below. What is the most underrated car you have ever come across? The one that should have been celebrated and wasn't? I read every single one. And if you know someone who loves cars and history, share this with them now. The best stories are always worth passing on. We'll see you in the next one.